When Jasmine Taylor arrived for her morning shift at Westside Diner in Oakland, California, she expected another day of serving coffee, taking orders, and making just enough in tips to cover her evening classes at community college. What she didn't expect was to see the world-famous dog whisperer, Cesar Millan, sitting alone in her section, looking exhausted as he tried to calm the nervous rescue dog trembling beneath his table. The discovery surprised the 28-year-old waitress. While most servers would have complained about a dog in the restaurant or simply taken the celebrity's order and moved on, Jasmine's response to seeing the distressed animal would set in motion a chain of events that no one could have anticipated. What began as a simple act of kindness would transform not just the lives of the rescue dog and its famous handler, but Jasmine herself, and ultimately an entire community. The question wasn't whether Jasmine would help the celebrity dog trainer. It was how far her compassion would take her, and what price she would pay for following her heart. No one, not even Cesar Millan himself, could have predicted what would happen next. The morning rush at Westside Diner had just begun to subside when Jasmine noticed him. A man in a baseball cap pulled low, sitting alone in the corner booth by the window. She might not have recognized him if not for the leash wrapped around his wrist, leading to a thin, caramel-colored dog curled up beneath the table. "That's Cesar Millan," whispered Tanya, another waitress, as she passed by with a coffee pot. "The dog whisperer guy from TV." Jasmine nodded, grabbing her notepad. She'd seen his show a few times. Her grandmother was a fan, always talking about his calm, assertive energy whenever her own terrier misbehaved. As she approached the table, she noticed the dog was shaking, its eyes darting around the busy diner. "Good morning, sir. Can I get you started with some coffee?" she asked, trying not to stare. Cesar looked up, his expression tired but kind. "Yes, please. Just black. And maybe some water for your friend?" Jasmine glanced under the table. A small smile crossed Cesar's face. "That would be nice, thank you. This is Luna. She's a rescue I'm working with. First time in a public place. She's a little overwhelmed." Jasmine knelt down to the dog's level. "Hi, Luna," she said softly, not making eye contact, letting the dog decide whether to acknowledge her. It was something she'd learned growing up with her grandfather's hunting dogs. Luna's trembling continued, but she stretched her nose forward slightly, sniffing Jasmine's hand. "She likes you," Cesar observed. "Most people she hides from completely." "My grandfather raised hunting dogs," Jasmine explained, standing up. "I'll get that water right away, and maybe a quiet corner would be better? The booth at the back has a wall on two sides. Might make her feel more secure." Cesar looked surprised by the suggestion. "That's exactly right. Would that be possible?" "Follow me," Jasmine said. As Cesar gathered Luna's leash and his jacket, Jasmine led them to the quieter section of the diner. Mr. Hendricks, her manager, shot her a disapproving look from behind the counter. Dogs weren't allowed in the restaurant. It was clearly posted on the door. But Jasmine pretended not to notice. Once settled in the corner booth, Luna seemed to relax slightly, laying down at Cesar's feet rather than trying to hide beneath the table. "Thank you," Cesar said. "Not many people understand what these animals need." "It's no problem," Jasmine replied, pouring his coffee. "What brings you to Oakland? Filming a show?" "Actually, I'm here for a rescue operation. Luna was found in an abandoned house with 5 other dogs. The others were more socialized, already adopted. But Luna, she needs special attention." Jasmine nodded, noticing how the dog tracked her movements without lifting her head. "She's studying everything. Smart girl." "Very smart," Cesar agreed. "Just scared. Trust issues." "I know a little about those," Jasmine said with a small smile. "Can I get you something to eat?" As she took his order, Jasmine couldn't help noticing Luna's thin frame. Without thinking, she added, "And maybe a side of plain scrambled eggs for Luna? Protein might help her." "On me." Cesar raised an eyebrow. "That's very kind. She hasn't been eating well with all the changes." When Jasmine returned with Cesar's breakfast and the small plate of eggs for Luna, Mr. Hendricks stepped into her path. "Jasmine, what is this?" he hissed, nodding toward the dog food. "You know the health code." "It's just eggs, Mr. Hendricks. And that's Cesar Millan. His dog is..." I don't care if it's the President of the United States. No dogs in my restaurant. It's bad for business. And you don't give away food without authorization. Jasmine glanced toward Cesar's booth. Luna had settled down, her head now resting on Cesar's foot. The dog trainer was checking his phone, unaware of the confrontation. Let me just serve this, and then I'll ask him to leave, Jasmine compromised. Mr. Hendricks frowned but stepped aside. Make it quick. Jasmine delivered the food, setting Luna's eggs on the floor beside her. The dog sniffed cautiously, then began to eat. Slowly at first, then with more enthusiasm. Look at that, Cesar said, genuinely pleased. First time she's eaten properly in days. You have a gift. Jasmine beamed at the compliment, but felt her manager's stare burning into her back. I'm sorry, but my manager just reminded me about our no dogs policy. I should have mentioned it earlier. Cesar's face fell. I understand. We'll finish quickly and get out of your way. No rush, Jasmine assured him. Take your time. When she returned to the counter, Mr. Hendricks was waiting, arms crossed. Did you tell him? Yes, but I said they could finish their meal. The dog is behaving perfectly, and that's not your decision to make, Jasmine. This is exactly why I've been concerned about your judgment. Always bending the rules, thinking you know better. Jasmine bit her tongue. She needed this job to pay for her veterinary technician classes. For the next 20 minutes, she continued serving her other tables while keeping an eye on Cesar and Luna. The dog had finished her eggs and now sat calmly beside the booth, watching the diner with cautious interest instead of fear. Progress. When Cesar waved for the check, Jasmine hurried over. How was everything? Perfect. Luna's already showing improvement. He handed her his credit card. Your intuition with her was remarkable. Are you in animal care? Studying to be a vet tech, actually. Taking night classes at Oakland Community. You're a natural, Cesar said. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a business card. If you're ever interested in working with rescue animals, give me a call. I have a training center in Los Angeles. Jasmine's heart raced as she took the card. Really? Thank you. That means a lot. As she processed his payment, Mr. Hendricks approached the table. Sir, I apologize, but I need to remind you that pets aren't allowed in our establishment. It's a health violation. We're just leaving, Cesar replied politely. Your waitress already informed me. You have an exceptional employee here. Mr. Hendricks forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Jasmine, I need to see you in my office before you clock out. Jasmine's stomach dropped. She'd been warned about breaking rules before. After Cesar and Luna left, with Cesar leaving her a $100 tip, Jasmine finished her shift with a growing sense of dread. At 3 p.m., she knocked on Mr. Hendricks' office door. Sit down, he said without looking up from his computer. Jasmine sat, hands folded in her lap. This is the third time this month you've disregarded policy. First it was giving free meals to that homeless man, then changing the schedule without authorization, and now allowing a dog in the restaurant and giving away food. Mr. Hendricks, He held up his hand. I've given you multiple warnings. I'm sorry, Jasmine, but I'm going to have to let you go. The words hit her like a physical blow. You're firing me? Over helping Cesar Millan? I'm firing you for consistently breaking rules that are in place for good reasons. Your final check will be mailed to you. Jasmine stood, fighting back tears. This job had been her lifeline, the only way she could afford her classes while helping her grandmother with rent. Fine, she said, her voice tight. Thank you for the opportunity. She unclipped her name tag and placed it on his desk before walking out. The bus ride home was a blur. How would she tell her grandmother? How would she pay for next semester's classes? All because she'd helped a dog who was scared, something she would do again in a heartbeat. That evening, as Jasmine sat at her small desk, rewriting her resume with puffy eyes, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Jasmine, this is Cesar Millan. I heard what happened at the diner today. Can we talk? Call me when you have a moment. Jasmine stared at her phone in disbelief. How did he know? How did he get her number? With trembling fingers, she called the number. Jasmine, thank you for calling, Cesar's voice came through clearly. "Luna and I wanted to thank you properly for your help today." "How did you find out about what happened?" she asked. "I went back to leave you something, and your colleague, Tanya, I believe, told me everything. I feel responsible." "It's not your fault," Jasmine assured him. "Mr. Hendricks and I never saw eye to eye." "Well, I'd like to make it right. Are you free tomorrow morning? I'd like to discuss something with you. Let's say 10 a.m. at Lakeside Park by the bandstand." Curious despite her situation, Jasmine agreed. The next morning dawned cool and foggy, typical for Oakland in spring. Jasmine took the bus to Lakeside Park, wondering what Cesar Millan could possibly want to discuss. Maybe he needed a local assistant while in town. Even a few days' work would help until she found something new. As she approached the bandstand, she spotted him sitting on a bench, Luna lying calmly at his feet. The dog looked different today, alert, curious, her tail thumping gently against the ground when she spotted Jasmine. "She remembers you," Cesar said as Jasmine approached. "She looks better already," Jasmine observed, kneeling to let Luna sniff her hand. This time the dog licked her fingers in greeting. "She is. Your eggs worked magic," Cesar laughed. "Please, sit." Jasmine joined him on the bench, still confused about why she was there. "I want to apologize again for what happened," Cesar began. "Please don't. It was my choice to help Luna. And that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you." Cesar turned to face her. "Jasmine, I've worked with animals for over 20 years. I've trained thousands of dogs and hundreds of handlers. What I saw yesterday, your instinct, your calm energy, your natural understanding of what Luna needed, that can't be taught." Jasmine felt herself blush at the praise. "Thank you, but I'm opening a new rescue and rehabilitation center," Cesar continued. "Not in Los Angeles, right here in Oakland. We'll be working with the city shelter to save dogs who would otherwise be euthanized due to behavioral issues." "That's amazing," Jasmine said, genuinely excited. "Oakland really needs that." "Yes, and I need someone who understands both the animals and the community." Cesar paused, his expression serious. "I'd like to offer you a position as our training coordinator." Jasmine blinked, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Full-time employment, salary, benefits, and we'll cover the remainder of your vet tech certification." "But I'm not qualified. I haven't even finished my program yet." "Qualifications can be earned. Natural ability like yours is rare." Cesar gestured to Luna, who had moved to sit closer to Jasmine. "She trusts you. That tells me everything I need to know." Jasmine's mind raced. Was this real? "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Cesar smiled. "The center opens in 6 weeks. Until then, you train with me and my team, learning our methods while helping shape the Oakland program." I never expected." Jasmine's voice caught as the reality sank in. "Yes, absolutely yes." As they discussed the details, Jasmine felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Not only had she found a new job, but she'd found her purpose. The perfect intersection of her love for animals and her desire to make a difference in her community. What she didn't know yet was how far this opportunity would take her. Within a year, the Oakland Center would become the model for urban rescue programs nationwide. Jasmine's innovative community outreach initiatives would bring together at-risk youth and abandoned dogs, healing both in the process. Her methods would be featured in Cesar's new book, and her story would inspire thousands. 6 months after being fired from Westside Diner for helping a scared dog, Jasmine Taylor would stand before a crowd at the grand opening of the Oakland Animal Rehabilitation Center, her grandmother beaming proudly in the front row as she cut the ribbon alongside Cesar Millan. The diner where she'd lost her job was just visible across the street. Mr. Hendricks would watch from his window as the crowd applauded the young woman whose compassion had changed not just her own life, but the lives of countless animals and people in her community. Sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen to you, especially when it happens because you followed your heart. Cesar Millan was accustomed to the chaos of Los Angeles traffic, but today it seemed particularly frustrating. He was running late for a meeting with network executives about his new television series. As he drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, a man with a cardboard sign caught his attention at the busy intersection. Normally, Cesar would have looked away, focused on the road ahead. But something about the man's posture, the way he held himself despite his ragged clothes, struck a familiar chord. When the traffic light changed and Cesar drove closer, his heart nearly stopped. Those eyes. He would recognize them anywhere, even beneath the weathered face and unkempt beard. It couldn't be. But it was. Miguel, Cesar whispered in disbelief. The man who had once been his closest childhood friend in Culiacan, Mexico, was standing on an American street corner, homeless and alone. The discovery stunned the famous dog whisperer. While most celebrities would have driven past with perhaps a twinge of sadness or a small donation tossed from the window, Cesar's response to seeing his long-lost friend would set in motion a series of events that would change both their lives forever. What began as a chance encounter at a traffic light would transform not just Miguel's dire circumstances, but would unlock a past that Cesar had left behind decades ago. The question wasn't whether Cesar would help his childhood friend. It was how deeply this reunion would force him to confront his own journey from immigrant to American success story. No one, especially Miguel himself, could have predicted what Cesar Millan would do next. Without hesitation, Cesar pulled his SUV to the curb, ignoring the angry honks from cars behind him. He jumped out and approached the homeless man cautiously. "Miguel? Miguel Reyes?" Cesar called out. The man turned, confusion clouding his face before a flash of recognition sparked in his eyes. "Cesar? Cesar Millan?" His voice was rough from disuse, his accent thicker than Cesar remembered. They stood facing each other, one man in designer clothes and expensive shoes, the other in layers of donated garments and worn-out boots. Yet in that moment, they were just two boys from Culiacan again, racing through dusty streets and dreaming of better lives. "What are you doing here? Like this?" Cesar asked, switching to Spanish automatically. Miguel lowered his sign, shame evident in his downcast eyes. "Life didn't work out as planned, my friend." Cesar glanced at his watch. The network executives could wait. Some things were more important than television deals. "Come with me," he said, putting his hand on Miguel's shoulder. "We need to talk." At a small cafe 2 blocks away, Miguel reluctantly shared his story over the first hot meal he'd had in days. He had crossed the border 7 years ago, leaving behind a failing farm and mounting debts. Unlike Cesar, who had made the journey at 21 with dreams of becoming a dog trainer, Miguel had come at 40, desperate to send money back to his wife and children. "I had good construction work for a while," Miguel explained, wrapping weathered hands around his coffee cup. "Sent money home every month. Then I fell from scaffolding 3 stories up." The injury had left him with chronic back pain. Without insurance or documentation, proper medical care was impossible. The construction company let him go. When he couldn't work, he couldn't pay rent. When he couldn't send money home, his wife found another man. Within 18 months, Miguel had lost everything. "My family stopped answering my calls," he said quietly. "I've been on the streets for almost 2 years now." Cesar listened, his own success suddenly feeling hollow in the face of his friend's suffering. He remembered how Miguel had once shared his lunch with him every day for a year, when Cesar's family couldn't afford enough food. How Miguel had taught him to swim in the river that ran behind their village. How they had promised to always look out for each other. "You're coming home with me," Cesar said firmly. "Today." Miguel shook his head. "I can't accept charity, even from an old friend." "It's not charity," Cesar insisted. "It's opportunity. You know I work with dogs. My training center needs good people. People who understand hard work." That night, Miguel slept in Cesar's guest room, clean-shaven and wearing borrowed clothes that hung loose on his thin frame. Cesar made calls, pulling strings with doctors he knew who could help with Miguel's back pain. He arranged for legal assistance to sort out Miguel's immigration status, a complex process, but not impossible with the right resources. In the morning, Cesar gave Miguel a tour of his dog psychology center, introducing him to the staff and the pack of dogs that helped rehabilitate troubled canines. Miguel watched, fascinated, as Cesar worked with an aggressive German shepherd, the dog calming under his friend's confident energy. "I don't know anything about training dogs," Miguel admitted. "You know about loyalty, patience, and hard work," Cesar replied. The dogs will teach you the rest." For the first time in years, Miguel felt something like hope flickering in his chest. But neither man could have anticipated what would happen next. The following morning, Cesar received a call from his mother in Mexico. She was in tears, but they were tears of joy. "It's a miracle, Cesar, after all these years." Confused, Cesar tried to calm her enough to explain. "Miguel's youngest daughter, Lucia. She's been trying to find him for years. She never believed he abandoned them. She's been searching, saving money to hire someone to look for him in America." Cesar's heart raced. "Mama, Miguel is here with me. I found him yesterday." His mother's gasp was audible. "Dios mío. Then it's true what they say about you. You really do work miracles with broken spirits." Later that day, Cesar set up a video call between Miguel and his now 18-year-old daughter Lucia, who had never stopped believing in her father. The truth spilled out in a torrent of tears and Spanish too rapid for anyone else to follow. The money Miguel had faithfully sent had been intercepted by his wife's new partner. The letters he'd written had been hidden. His family had never chosen to abandon him. They had been told he had abandoned them. As Cesar watched his childhood friend reconnect with the daughter who had never lost faith, he realized that sometimes the greatest acts of rehabilitation weren't with dogs at all, but with the humans who loved them. Within 6 months, Miguel had become an invaluable part of Cesar's team, his natural calm energy making him especially effective with the most traumatized rescue dogs. His back pain was managed with proper treatment, and his immigration status was on the path to resolution. A year after their chance encounter at that traffic light, Cesar stood beside Miguel at LAX, waiting for Lucia to emerge from the arrivals gate. She had been granted a student visa to attend community college in Los Angeles, where she planned to study veterinary science, inspired by her father's new career. When she rushed into her father's arms, Cesar stepped back, giving them space for their reunion. But Miguel reached out, pulling his old friend into their embrace. "You gave me back my life," Miguel said, voice thick with emotion. "And now you've given me back my family." Cesar shook his head. "You did the same for me when we were boys. You reminded me why I do what I do. It's not about training dogs. It's about rebuilding broken connections. Sometimes the most important rescue isn't the one you plan. It's the one that finds you at exactly the right moment."